Hello everybody, welcome back to another stream. Hope you're doing well. Sorry for the delay. Yeah, for those who are in the Discord, you may have seen the message that I had just found a cat in the yard. So before the stream usually starts, I mean every night, it's not usually. So before the stream starts, I try to get the dogs out and medicate the little guy so that way they can have a good night and not have to worry about them throughout the stream. And earlier today, my dogs are going crazy, barking at something along the fence line, and so I went out there and investigated it, and there was a tiny, tiny kitten. And so I managed to get the dogs in earlier today and investigate the kitten situation, and long story short, it eventually got away, and you know, that was kind of fine, because I was calling around to like animal shelters to see if anyone would take it, or Humane Society to see if there's like a trap and release program, but I was just kind of getting the runaround. Then it managed to get away from me, so I was like, okay, well that sucks, but I'll keep an eye out on it. And I didn't see it for, you know, a couple more hours in the evening, and then all of a sudden, after I let the dogs out for the nightly trip, my little guy, he's losing his mind again, just like he was earlier in the day when we first found the kitten. And I was like, oh, damn it. So I went back outside, found the kitten, and tried to provide it some food and water, because the thing was tiny. And like, the weird thing is, like, it was one solitary kitten on its own, which is a bit strange, because when they're that small, you'd imagine that they'd be around their siblings. So I don't exactly know what's going on with that. So I tried to put out some food and water for it, because it was able to escape through one link in a chain link fence. Like, anyway, so I just had to do a bit of running around right before the stream started, so I'm a little bit flustered and behind on that. I might need to go AFK later to actually fill up my water bottle, because it's pretty much empty right now. So anyway, how's everyone else's night going? This has been my night so far, and I don't remember if I pinned this. Okay, no, I did. Okay. So, Dave, our Crusader, Galaxy Dragon, and Corporeal, welcome back in. Hey, thanks, Corporeal. Hopefully you enjoy them, and thanks for joining in the stream. So, alright. As a recap of last stream, I put myself here to remind myself to go get the Finger Slayer blade because I wanted to talk a lot about the Crucible Knight armor set, and it kind of sucks just talking about it without having the physical articles handy, so this is why I'm over here. So we're going to be going through the Finger Slayer blade quest to get to Onsel River to go down to Deeproot depths and pick up the Crucible Knight armor set. So aside from that, last night we went through the rest of the base of Rao. We went through the Scorpion River catacombs, and I think that was it. Oh yeah. Then we came back to Skidoo Altus and made our way up to fight the hippo because I didn't have a ton of time on at the end of the last stream. Managed to one-shot it, didn't I? And then I was like, okay, I want to talk about Crucible stuff. Yeah, that's what it was, because the hippo has the Crucible thorns incantation, so that's kind of what led me down this train of thought. So it's where we will continue things. And hey, Lone Paretta, how's it going? It's been a minute. How you doing? Alright, so as we come into the Night's Sacred Ground, we get transforming silver tears. In my mind of minds, I consider these things to be mimic tears, because they transform. And because we're in Nokron, we will pick up some more Celestial Dew. I should have gone for the Visceral, but it's whatever. It is interesting that the silver tears have the silver tier moniker on them, so maybe they're technically still silver tears because the mimic tier enemy has its own special nameplate, but I don't think so. One of the cool things is if you do gank the transforming silver tears before they transform, they can drop the golden rune tier 7s, which suggests to me that the runes might be integral for their transformation, or like they might get consumed in that process, is what I'm trying to say. And since we're talking about silver tears, I do think there's a lot of commonalities between silver tears, putrescence, and even the lava pools in the ruined forges in the Shadowlands. And I've been thinking recently that because the giants... Hold on, let's pull up the talisman. Because the smithing gods or whatever were able to imbue the weapons with souls because they perceived scripts in the wrinkles of molten metal, that makes me think it might be tied to maybe a metaphorical style of gold, and there might be a commonality between what's going on with the mimic tears and the lava tears and putrescence. So yeah. Phantom Leaves, nice to see you again. Oh man, I totally forgot to actually look at your script that you're asking for feedback on. I had the moment earlier and I opened it up, and then I like waited a while to tell you that not everybody has Microsoft Word, and then I was distracted. So my fault there, my guy. I knew I was forgetting something that I wanted to go back and look at that was posted on the Discord yesterday, but then you guys kind of popped off overnight, so I forgot about it. Right. And because we do have one random silver tier which can transform into a troll, I have wondered whether or not the creation of the Dragonkin soldiers happened through silver tier trolls partaking in dragon communion, because when we go to Noxtella, there are a certain number of silver tiers that have been given Gravelstone, which is why they may have electric attacks, allegedly. I know Teen Sith said she managed to get one of those mimics to drop Gravelstone for her, but I have not gotten them to drop any Gravelstone on my account when I was arcane stacking and farming, so I don't know if Extra's lying to me or if I just have the worst RNG in Elden Ring history there. Hey, Degusta, how's it going? Your ignorance on the DLC lore? Well, if you're trying to avoid spoilers, there's probably like maybe, I don't know how much content we have before we get back into the DLC, but we will be going back into the DLC eventually on the stream, so it's a good time for you to chime in now while we're still doing other stuff. Whoops. Alright, so now that we picked up the Fingerslayer Blade, we will return to Ranni's Rise and give it to her. And Celavis should have long been dead, which is part of the reason why I didn't do this stuff before the DLC, and then I don't know why I bounced around so much. Fingerslayer Blade. The hidden treasure of the eternal city of Nokron, a blade said to have been born of a corpse. This blood-drenched fetish is proof of the high treason committed by the eternal city and symbolizes its downfall. Cannot be wielded by those without a fate, but is said to be able to harm the greater will and its vassals. So, this brought up a lot of questions in the base game, and with the DLC, virtually none of those questions have been answered. One of the questions or theories that I brought forward in my Glowmide Queen video is that I imagine it could be possible that if the Fingerslayer Blade is analogous to the Sacred Relic Sword and was indeed born of a corpse, could that be the Glowmide Queen's corpse who made this? Would that be one way we can reconcile multiple factions? Were the Godskins related to the Eternal Cities? Having said that, I don't think it works out very neatly just because there's not a lot of parallels isn't the right word, but there's not a lot of connections between like the Nox and the Godskins directly, so this is just kind of like one of the theories that I've thrown out there, which I don't think has a very strong chance of being accurate, but I don't think it can be entirely discounted either. And I think the biggest wrinkle with this theory here would be that the Glowmide Queen's Godslayer's Greatsword almost seems like it would be a better candidate if she was to have been turned into a sword, but setting all that stuff aside, we have a lot of other unresolved questions with the addition of meta in the DLC and all of the issues with the Two Fingers and the Fingerslayer Blade specifically. So we don't know what this treasonous betrayal was by the Nox. It might potentially relate to what Marika did at the story trailer and the Divine Gate. That would be pretty neat. But then the question would become like, well, then why did Marika kind of end up abandoning the cities? Was that because the Greater Will like struck back and it was just kind of beyond her control at that point? Kind of like how she's been doubly crucified now, I suppose, but I don't really know. Hey Cosmos, how's it going? Connective tissue, the vibes are off. Loam says the DLC made them all confused with the Nox. You assumed they were descendant of Marika's people, but now with the shamans, it's like, who are the Nox even? So the Nox could have been a settlement of freed shamans, and like maybe Marika started her rule like breaking away from the Horn Center or whatnot, or just gave her people freedom. That would be one way to explain it, but a lot of the stuff that I don't like about the DLC's lore is that it really convolutes the timeline, which was already convoluted, in that if the Nox are indeed a pre-Erdtree civilization, then like how did they come to rise to power? Like how long ago was like Marika around? I mean, the Numen are said to be long-lived, so there very well could have been like, I don't know, maybe 1,000 years before she did the betrayal and like freed her people, but you know, that's just all super heavy speculation right there. El Degusto's avoided spoilers, but you're not going to get to play the DLC for ages, so you're going to dive in. Oh man. Oof. I don't know what to say to that. Like, right now, it's like diving head first. It might be better for you if you're curious about the DLC stuff to check out like the beginning of my playthrough, but my playthrough also started off with a bunch of spoilers, so that might not be the best idea after all. Yeah, that sucks that you can't play it though, but thanks for joining in the streams. It's been a minute. I hope you're doing well. J. Con Luke says the vassals of the Greater Will are gods, if you're not mistaken. So the vassals of the Greater Will could be a reference to the fingers, which would make sense because it's the Finger Slayer blade. That's the way that I've always read it. But when we look at the icon of the sword, we kind of get a similar chest skeletal-like thing going on with the hilt, where in the Sacred Relic blade, you kind of have like presumably Radagon's arm sticking out. Maybe it's the same kind of situation here. And then we also get a very evocative spiral design going along with the Finger Slayer blade. So if Marika's betrayal happened at one point, did the Finger Slayer blade stuff happen before Marika's betrayal? It's a mess. I really don't know what to make of a lot of this stuff. Like, I didn't really know entirely what to make of the Nox and the Fire Giants connections to like Marika and everything before the DLC launched, but now it's just become even more difficult trying to piece all that together. And then Galaxy Dragon asks, what if the Shamans and the Nox are both Numens, but just different but related groups? And that's another strong possibility. But then one question becomes, were the Nox then complicit in what was going on with the Shaman villages, or did they eventually free them? It would have been nice if we had even a hint of that kind of story. Just, if for no other reason, than like not necessarily wanting lore answers, but just like world build even. Loam says, could it be that Miyazaki starts a storyline, gets a new line that takes it more and replaces the original one, but leaves it in game with slight changes and still unfinished to leave us to ponder? Yeah, and as you brought up with the Canehurst connection, I think that's a very strong possibility. I was trying to be really charitable towards Elden Ring and its lore because it supposedly had more of a backstory with George R. R. Martin's involvement. But to be fair, I always expect a decent amount of like movable parts just from the nature of game development, because there's any number of projects that might not make it to fruition for whatever reason throughout the development process. So I imagined like the main narrative should mostly stay consistent and some of the side stuff would be different, but I don't know what to make of everything with like how disparately connected the Nox are to everything else. So yeah, I think even Elden Ring is probably subject to the same kind of shortfalls as previous titles like Bloodborne was or were, because I said titles. Anyway.
Ah, it was thee, not blithe it seemeth. Even in my slumber
I forgot. We can make this a better lore playthrough. Get a good close-up of her face.
Ah, it was thee, not blithe it seemeth. Even in my slumber I sensed it. It is in thy possession, is it not? The hidden treasure of Nokron. My thanks. Finally all the pieces are in place. Soon must I begin my journey. Upon the dark path only I may tread.
And of course, Ranni's questline with her needing to kill her fingers to, institute her new order raises the question as to whether Miquella's fingers are dead, which is definitely arguable because you can kind of see them dead on top of his divine tower with Millennius. But then, why does only Ranni need to go through this trouble with her fingers? Should she have just waited?
But before I leave, I shall entrust thee with this.
Carian inverted statue. Hi, boya.
My thanks for thy sterling efforts. A strange gift, perhaps, but a rare sort such as thee would welcome it, I'm sure. I am certain now. Fate steered us to our reunion. I must thank Torrent, too, for his part. You may leave now. It was but brief. But thou gavest me fine service. What is it? You may go. I too am to depart on a journey. Upon the dark path, only I may tread. What is it? You may guide to.
Alright, so that's it with her dialogue for now. We can talk to Iji to get more insights, and then we'll be able to go into Renna's Rise, which there'll be a decent chunk to talk about with all of that. Loam asks, not Loam, Phantom Leaf asks, why are her fingers the only ones underground? Thinking emoji. And then Cosmo said, one line of thought was already that the ancestral followers are like the Nox of the descendants of the ancient dynasty. The ancestral followers are shamans. Part of Cosmos wonders if somewhere in development that America shamans were supposed to be part of that group, but somehow ended up as their own distinct thing. I would need to double check the ancestral followers shaman, because that's a different type of shaman than the America shaman. Actually, I don't really need to double check that. I'm sure like the Miko of the Miko village is unique. So let me pull it up. Shining horned headband worn by ancestral followers shamans. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense that they would call them shamans here. Let me type it in for you guys. So ancestral followers are Saishi, which can I do this? I don't know if I can. Okay. My plugin doesn't work for this to try to show you guys what each character means individually. And because of the way my setup is now, I can't like share my screen to give you like the G show. Actually I could just link you G show. That would make sense. If anybody's super curious about that. So here is the G show search for Saishi. And if you look to the right side of the screen, it will break down the two kanji in it. So the first kanji, Matsuri, is a character which means like kind of festival, but it's more of like a religious type thing, and is used for rituals and things like that. So the second one, she is, or Skasadoru is a character, yeah, administer is a good one to talk about that. So it's like a rite doer. So shaman is a great localization for that. And the Miko of the shaman village are, hold on. This uses an unstandard form of the kanji, are this. Shaman village equals that equals Miko. So they are at the very least texturally different. So it doesn't really bother me, but yeah. Even with all that said, there are still a lot of questions about like why the ancestral followers are doing their thing. And like what separates them from the Hornsent, especially based off of some of my beliefs that I don't think the Hornsent were really all that different from anybody else. But maybe the shaman folk don't actually do divine invocation. Maybe that would be the big difference, but I don't know. Augusto thinks the vassals of the Greater Will are inhuman avatars like the Fingers and the Elden Beast. Yes. Do you think the inverted zone came from Bergenworth? I don't think like literally, but I think they definitely had that idea that they wanted to work with, and they finally implemented it with the Karian Tower. Yeah. Phantom Leaves says maybe the Nox are an offshoot of the shamans who settled over the ruins of the ancient dynasty, or not descended from the ancient dynasty. Yeah, I get the feeling that the Nox and the ancient dynasty folks should be distinct, but I know a lot of people think otherwise, so that's just one of those ones where I really don't comment on it a lot, just because it's more one of those things where it's like, I disagree, and that's pretty much all you can do with that line of thought. All right, looks like Cosmos is looking for a job to localize the next From Software game. It's really cool looking at EG with the night sky and the fire in the background, though.
Oh, there you are. Good of you to drop by. Have you heard? Lady Ranni has departed on her journey along the dark path of Empyrean, from Renna's Rise, as she calls it. It would not have been possible without you. As Lady Ranni's war counselor, and moreover, her childhood warden, I express my deepest gratitude. You, and only you, were Lady Ranni's true champion.
It's kind of funny that it's raining now. Can we add any more particles to this? So we get the Carian filigree on his anvil. I was wondering if there was any similarities to what we get in the ruined forges, but I honestly don't remember what they look like in the forges too well. Maybe that is supposed to be evocative of the fell god of fire or something after all.
My purpose is nearing its end. I've served Lady Ranni for as long as I can remember. It has been a long and wondrous journey. Now Lady Ranni is in your hands. I pray that you serve her well, unto the very end. Lady Ranni has departed on her journey along the dark path of Empyrean, from Renna's Rise, as she calls it. Now, Lady Ranni, I pray that you...
Alright. So that's pretty much it for now. Did we let Blythe out? Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. I'm not too worried about it. Maybe I should be, though, because are we gonna go all the way down there? Let me think about this. How do we get to Deeproot depths? Why am I blanking so hard right now? This shouldn't go this way. Wait, does this lead to Deeproot depths? Let me think about this. No, because Lake of Rot. Estelle. This doesn't go where I want to go, does it? Am I going to actually have to go through the sewers? I thought her quest does take us down there. That was Fia's. Oh, I know what it is. We need to go through the damn aqueduct. Can't believe I was forgetting about that. I mean, I can. I tried to literally block it out from my memory as much as possible. I didn't need to pick up the Finger Slayer Blade at all. Alright, so screw Ranni's journey. I really don't want to fight the gargoyles, but I'd rather kind of do that than deal with the, what's it called? The Frenzy Flame prescription. And going through everything there. But I guess now's as good a time as any to talk about them. Do we actually get this corpse in the place? I mean, obviously the specimen storeroom would have more horns on it, but I thought they were kind of visually distinct. Yeah, these horns kind of look different. They don't really look like your average Divine Invocation style horn. Hey Captini, nice to see you again. I got invaded by the dog. Oh no. Do I think EG knows Black Flame protection and that's why he's coated in Black Flame alongside the Black Knife assassin corpses? That would be something indeed. I don't think so, but I like the cope. Hello girl, hold on. Give me 1 second to deal with my cute doggy. I will be right back. And this is why I tend to not parry. It's because I'm trash. I done goofed. I felt like I should have blocked that. Anyway, I should probably rely more on dodging, and then I was just slow. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, there's a spot to stand. Okay, that's kind of nice. I should have dodged. I felt like I was way early for that. Alright, yeah, I screwed up. Lie or die. Alrighty. So, alright. So, Tor Pharaohthorn, welcome on in. So, Cosmo says, Iji seems to them like he knows he'll die soon, especially with the Blythe dialogue. Yeah, they seem really resigned to their fate, all things considered. Silver tier husks. Thank you for the appreciating the be right back screen. I still need to finish my Hollow Knight one. Alright, let's go ahead and rest. Captini said the hammer looks like the thing we were wondering yesterday, the stone thing with tendrils. Oh, like the Rao thing? Yeah, a little bit. I think it looks distinct enough where it doesn't look like it has as many tendrils? I don't know. Shifra Aqueduct. That will be dealt with one dog, now the other one's acting up. But I'm not going to deal with the Crucible Knights or the Fallen dudes, because I'm just trying to scoot on back into the DLC. And, oh yeah, we also killed, okay, this is something we did so long ago I almost forgot about. I was going to ignore Devin here. No, this one's Darian. No, this one is Devin, right? Devin? Darian's the older, Devin's the younger, I think. I'm gonna, I was going to ignore the younger D brother, but I forgot. On this playthrough, we actually already killed his brother in Summon Water Village. So we already have the twinned set. We didn't do the Fia questline. Hand over the twinned armor set. No. Screw you. Yeah, so he's got this little golden barrier here. Yeah, so that's kind of how you learn his older brother's name. I don't think he calls him by name in the Fia questline. Maybe he does. I don't fully remember. We get the inner order gesture. Alright, so now once we reload the area, he will be immediately hostile toward us, and he will know that we are the ones who have murdered, or who has murdered his brother. Which might suggest that the memories are stored in the armor. What are you doing? Hey, give me that. Come on. Alright. My guy's feisty. Didn't help that he had the excitement with the feline before the stream. Okay.
Soon you will know. Vengeance for Darian. The wrath of D.
So it's interesting that he doesn't actually wear the armor. But he certainly knows that we are the one who's killed his brother. He's able to use Litany of Proper Death.
How could this? Forgive me. Darian.
So now we get the inseparable sword with the rest of that twinned Twinned Knight set, which we already had. So that didn't do much damage because we are in DLC territory at this point, which is end game for the base game. So True Connoisseur, nice to see you again. And I'm just going to summon the Mimic for this fight because I hate these dudes. I should not have done that now that I think about it, because these can't be routed, I don't think. Vacuum Slice. Oh, yeah, I actually do damage. Okay. Part of my, I don't want to say hesitation. Issue with dealing with these dudes is trying to do it at low levels, which is just awful. Man, that feels nice hitting that hard. Sweet. I think it's alive? No, okay. This music is so, stressful, tense, I don't know. I was trying to heal again. There we go. Feels nice to bully them for a change. Gargoyle's Greatsword and Twin Blade. I'm trying to ride Torrent. Hey, Enter Y, Jack Irish. Nice to have both of you guys again. That coffin trip does not bring you to Godwin's place. To get to the Lake of Rot, you use an elevator. No, so the issue was I did want to go to Deeproot. I was thinking that I needed to go further in Ranni's quest, which is only half true. I just need to get as far as Nokron to be able to access Deeproot. There's some item in the DLC that looks like it has the same script as some of this stuff. Don't remember what it is. Such a cathartic victory, yeah. Jack said, have I heard of that absolutely insane person who's suing FromSoft? I think I did. Weren't they suing like multiple game companies for making games too addictive? Or maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. I saw like a headline, but I didn't look into it. Oh, he thinks there's a second game in the game? Then I guess I haven't heard about him. You just listened to an interview with that guy today? The runes are the stuff on the secret right scroll. Maybe? I think those ones are different, but you might be right. Alright. It's a hell of a trip in the coffin. It travels beneath the sea all the way to the base of the Erdtree. I don't think it's beneath the sea. Maybe it is, technically speaking. But that might also tie into the way that the stone coffins wound up in the fissure in the DLC to a certain degree. And so with these coffins traveling toward the Erdtree, I do wonder whether or not the role of the Shadowlands was altered at some point, or more like the role of death was altered to originally go toward the Shadowland and then change to go into the Erdtree at all, or if it doesn't really matter, whether or not the roots of the Shadow Tree are linked to the Erdtree, or formerly linked to the Erdtree. I'm not going to worry about the God one, Grandma. I didn't mean to do that. So we got another finger reader cone. Now I'm like double checking all of their garb and whatnot to see if there are any visual connections to what's going on with the horn scent and its grandam. I kind of hate grandam as a localization instead of like grandma or something, which I guess it's like a French word, but it feels like I am being sponsored by a car every time I say grandam. Hey, Night Scott, nice to see you again. What a jerk. You know, I was going to ignore this guy and just go visit Knight Sileria, but they had to make it personnel. Night Scott thinks it travels beneath the bay that was created when the land of shadow was sealed. Do you mean the coffin that we just went through? Then Lone thinks I'm onto something. It could be that Marika changed all that to get the souls to the Erdtree and herself. I kind of am of the opinion, at least for now, that what's going on with the Shadow Tree could be that it was like the inverted part of the Erdtree's roots and kind of grew into its own tree. That might explain why it's the shadow of it. And then there's like a bunch of awkward stuff to talk about, like destined death and its relation to it. So anyway, as we come over here, we get a Silurian Crucible Knight, and we will be able to like wear its set after we kill it, as well as get its cool weapon. And I will have a ton to talk about with that and the DLC. I forgot it had a boss plate. So these ones have wings kind of like the Divine Bird Warriors, but apparently the Divine Bird Warrior power is different somehow. It's similar to the Golden Crucible, but is distinct. It's kind of funny. Oh, okay. My roll came out slow, not my second one, the one that got me killed. I was trying to get up faster, and then it just didn't go. That's what I get for trying to sandbag it. I actually died to the Crucible Knights. I think I had a decent chunk of runes as well, didn't I? It's crazy that the Mausoleum Knights share their heraldry with the Cuckoo. Yeah. And that also brings up a lot of questions about the catacombs in general, I feel. But it is noteworthy that we do have some trolls who are headless Carian knights. This dude actually does a decent chunk of damage. Maybe I should do that. There we go. I thought he was gonna phase transition. Or she. I always got the vibe that Sileria is like a more feminine name, but it doesn't really matter, I don't think. Why did it attack in the air? That's so annoying. I just jumped for no reason. Hey, Siluria's tree. One of my favorite and most hated items in the entire game. And the Crucible Tree Helm, Tree Armor, Gauntlets, and Greaves. So all that, I'm going to warp towards the Elden Throne area, more like the bedchamber. And then talk about a bunch of random stuff. Oh no, I forgot. Okay. Do I want to fight Gideon just to talk about this? Yeah, okay. I will save the Crucible stuff until after Gideon, and then I will not fight Horaloo. It's all good. Yushin, you don't need to apologize for not participating. It's all a voluntary thing. Life happens. I totally understand. Counting Sheep, welcome back to the stream. You always thought the Crucible Knights were the coolest. I was super enamored with the Crucible Axe Knight next to Tanith in all of the promo materials. And I was super excited to finally get the Crucible Axe armor set, and then it just does not look nearly as cool on me as it does the enemies. Feels bad, man. And then John Paul Cocker, nice to see you again, as well as Kyle. Yeah, Mausoleum Knights do have some of the same heraldry as the Cuckoo do on their horses. It's really, really hard to see, though. Like, it's kind of faded, so don't feel bad for missing it. And then, did I see Jack's message? I don't think I did. That's not really important, bro. Yeah, they changed her to the Hornsent Grandam instead of Empyrean, but she was still like referred to as Empyrean in the Japanese, so they changed it in both languages, surprisingly enough. Night Scott says, Siluria's woe and Ordovis' vortex might be similar to the way Spirit works too. Maybe. It does bother me that Spirit is more white instead of like red gold. Elda's visiting Nito. Or is he just joking at what I was doing, going into the deeper depths? I won't fight Horaloo, sad Horaloo noises. He gets that honor after the DLC, just for the lulz. I'm gonna fight him and Millennia, probably.
Here you'd come, to stand before the Elden Ring, to become Elden Lord. What a sad state of affairs. I commend your spirit, but alas, none shall take the throne. Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle. Unto eternity.
Alright, so the whole struggling thing gets people very curious. Generally, I think that Gideon had his mind changed and he didn't really believe that stuff originally. Man, I wanted to stun lock him. I'm kind of upset that it doesn't work that way anymore. If it ever, if it ever did.
Until now.
I got by Gideon, the Gidget. It's kind of funny. Who is that? It's not me. I don't know what you're talking about, man. You can lose to this guy? No, you can, not me. All the spamming sometimes is still scary. I just didn't give him enough respect on his name, I suppose. It's a lot of swords for his little phalanx. I really don't like whatever the Karmic Justice is called in this game on him. It's super annoying. It does a lot of damage. I wonder if part of the reason I'm taking so much damage... Oh, I guess I am only like 125, which is normal for the base game. It's just because I don't have like the Shadow Tree blessings to make things a lot easier.
My fellow, you fought well until now.
Karmic Justice. It'd be nice if there's an easier way to pop it. I could probably just like throw items or something. Appreciate that I let him get his monologue off. I mean, it is a lore playthrough, even if I'm skipping a lot of lore this time around. Alright, let's actually... I definitely don't need this one on anymore. Don't need that. Wow, I really haven't picked any of that stuff up. I've been really lazy this playthrough. Ugh. Just throw a rot pot? No. I mean, if I really wanted to be degenerate, I would just summon the Mimic. I want to be really degenerate, guys. I'm going to summon the Mimic. Come on, Mimic, do something. That wasn't the something I had in mind. Get pooped on. Counting sheep, always thought Gideon doesn't have the full picture and he doesn't know what he's talking about, whether he's being manipulated or not, whatever the theories are. A lot of people like to take him at his word for almost everything, which is kind of... That's silly of me. Which has just always felt a little bit naive to me. He got both of us. So some people do think it is supposed to be America's will that we struggle for eternity, but I feel like he just got too scared at the actual prospect of beginning a new age and ending the old one. Look at this guy running up like he's gonna do something with his fists. I rolled into that. I'm gonna die. At least that was Karmic Justice on. There we go. Damn, that did a lot of damage. I even have the anti-magic talisman on too. Why are his damn daggers not moving? I was trying to roll catch him. Bro! I didn't untrack it in the air like that. That was just...
In my bones, a tarnished cannot become a lord. Not even you. A man cannot kill a god.
Scepter of the All-Knowing set. Why is the Mimic spot spamming Rot Breath? It's because that's the only incantation I have on him right now. And so, before I summoned my Mimic, I put away my sword and only had my talisman out. Or not talisman, my seal. So that way it would spam the Rot Breath. It's a pretty good strat for dealing with certain things like that. He has returned. The Lord has returned at long last. Our very first Lord, to brandish the Elden Ring once more. Alright. And as we come up here, we get brilliantly gold foliage. Which, it's kind of interesting that in Anir Limb, the foliage is gold as well, but it's of a much, like, whiter, lighter hue. Yushin can understand becoming disillusioned with the concept of fighting for your own order. You don't quite understand why he fights us, however. It's clear he doesn't believe it's possible to become Elden Lord. It's because he probably thinks... He probably does unironically think that America has given them an impossible task. And because of that, the only way he might be able to make sense of a seemingly impossible task's missive would mean that she has an ulterior motive in that we have to struggle for eternity. There is a kind of twisted sense to it, but I think he's definitely misguided with a lot of his judgments about that. Alright. Mikola referring to us as America's chosen consort. You feel like Mikola would be way more clued in than Gideon? Yeah. Galaxy Dragon says, couldn't it be Radagon's will to go on forever? America wanted Hugh to make the god-slaying weapon. And that's another thing that people wonder about. But then, one of the sticking points of that is... It isn't as though we're told that Gideon looks into Radagon's will, he looks into America's will, and then we have that whole issue of identity between the two. So I just prefer to take it at face value that he looks at America's will and just kind of misunderstands it. And maybe you could have your own headcanon that by looking into America's will, he's also seeing Radagon's will and misconstruing things. I get that, but I personally don't like to see it that way. Pixie asks, is the white gold unalloyed, not mixed with order? Maybe, that's a good question, but then I would almost assume not, because it should potentially be blending everything together if it is like related to the Crucible, but maybe it's not after all. So we'll have to talk about that more when we get like the seal, spiral tree seal or whatever it's called. Hey Oni, nice to see you again. And Corn, welcome back in. You think the similar golden leaves indicate the Erdtree is roided out? Is roided out golden tree from Anir Limb? I'm not entirely sure what to make of that whole situation yet, but I definitely think there's a similar principle going on, especially with like the corpses in the Erdtree's roots, as well as like the corpses in the Anir Limb tree trunks, I guess. So yeah. Oni says it's pretty annoying there's a character whose entire gimmick is learning things and we can't tell him anything from the DLC, or that he doesn't even hint to us anything about the DLC. That would have been a nice tie-in. That's honestly one of my biggest complaints about the FromSoft games in general. They could do a lot better establishing how their DLCs connect into the worlds of their base games, and they just don't do it. And I'm going to be honest, it feels really lazy. I understand not wanting to mess with a completed product, but I mean, by adding in the DLC, they've already like taken that first step. Like, what's the baby step to follow it, to me? Maybe of course there are considerations with like actors and recording studios and whatnot, but I mean, if that's really a concern, write better contracts, I guess. I don't know what else to say. Yushin was hoping the DLC gave us more answers as to if Merrick planned the shattering and the slaying of the Elden Beast. We suppose it makes sense to keep that ambiguous. I should put on his armor. It's Destiny? No. Destiny is, it's over. The witness is dead. Alright. So speaking of putting on armor, though, I'm going to put on the Crucible set. It would have been nice if I waited to do this with the Spiral Tree seal. I almost always want to say shield instead of seal. Alright. Oh man, I was hoping I could like hold it up like Farmer John or something. So, I already pulled out my telescope. When we look at the Crucible Knight armor itself, let's put all this stuff away. If the armor is supposed to represent a tree, which, you know, is kind of arguable, then it looks like we have a spiral thing coming up from the roots into what might be the trunk right here. And like the dot in the middle is supposed to represent life or something like that. And then the branches might be at the very top. And in some ways, if these branches are at the very top, they might kind of resemble the little figure on all of the statues leading up to Leyndell, which I'll show off later. But I just wanted to highlight the odd spiral thing at the bottom. And now that we have the Sileria spear, let's go ahead and read it. Sileria's tree, weapon of one of the two honored as foremost among the Crucible Knights. The primordial form of the Erdtree is close in nature to life itself, and this spear, modeled on its crucible, is imbued with ancient holy essence. So, oh yeah, it's the helmets. Okay. Helm of the Crucible Knights who served Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. The great tree ornamentation is the Knight Sileria's mark, displayed also by her men. Holds the power of the Crucible of Life, the primordial form of the Erdtree. Strengthens aspect of the Crucible incantations. So, if this tree is modeled on the Crucible, and if Crucible Knight Sileria's set is supposed to be symbolic of the quote-unquote Great Tree, then does that mean the Crucible was the Great Tree? What does that mean in relation to the Crucible being described as the primordial form of the Erdtree? I still have mixed feelings about this because we're told that the Erdtree was born at the War of the Fire Giants. So it's just really annoying to me, even if there's nothing technically inaccurate about saying that the Erdtree could have existed in a prior form to this. But man, it really bothers me that it said that it was born at the like during the war against the Fire Giants. So setting all that aside, there is still kind of the unanswered question of when the Shadowlands was separated from the Lands Between and how the Shadow Tree connects into the Erdtree. So there is a good possibility that the Crucible could have been modeled on a tree, which is said verbatim in the spear description. It's modeled on the Crucible. That the Hornsent could have had their own tree that was kind of the primordial Erdtree, I guess. And it could have been a spiral tree. And the first cardinal sin could have been burning down that Erdtree to make Marika's Erdtree, question mark. And one thought that I want to impress upon you guys again, which I've brought up multiple times throughout the playthrough, is that the Battlefield Priest's Cookbook depicts what I believe to be the Erdtree with like a really weird looking root tree structure underneath. And I've wondered whether or not it's supposed to be an upside down tree, and whether or not the Crucible and the Erdtree are kind of like the equivalent of a Chinese finger trap, with the Erdtree coming out on top and the Crucible Erdtree being on the bottom through the roots or something, the Shadow Tree. So part of the reason why I legitimately wonder about that is because of the depiction of the Doubletree thing on the Battle Knight cookbook, as well as what's on the actual door to the Erdtree itself. So we've got the Elden ring at the bottom, a +1 tree, coming into a very tiny tree looking like thing, and then a bunch of roots. So is the Shadow Tree literally underneath the Erdtree? Maybe. I don't know. I wonder how you guys feel about that in chat. I feel like I'm forgetting something else to talk about this, but I'm kind of, rambling for a long time here. Hey, SNX, welcome back into the stream. And Not Too, nice to see you again. Phantom Leaves asks, does burning the Erdtree make anyone else kind of sad? You mean it represents an oppressive order, but it's so pretty? Enterwise says, white gold is a real thing. It's alloyed. Understandable. Not Too says, could the two entwined shadow trees have been connected to the wooden part of the Erdtree originally, and a previous burning created the shadow tree, and the giant gold tree was created to cover it up? Maybe. So I do think that the two might have been all one tree originally. Well, maybe not like originally. I think they were all like connected directly until the shattering. And so if we look at, is it the Deathroot description? Or, yeah, I think Deathroot. Do I still have any? I don't think I have Deathroot on me. I could pick some up, but I don't want to go that far out of my way. So it's Deathroot or the Deeproot Depths map description. Or both. I did not get the Deeproot Depths map description. So let's do that. I don't remember exactly where it is. I think it's probably like right next to this thing somewhere. Oh, nope, not this one. This one, right? Nope, this is further away. I'm silly. I think it's like right around this one. Let me level up before I get clapped for having on a completely different armor set. Really thought it was like somewhere around here. Anyway, I'll leave that alone for now. Oh lordy, coming. What do I think the deal is with the Black Knights using Crucible incants? You think they were Godfrey's Knights, perhaps? With the soldiers also having the signature stamp? Well, they were nobility of the prior order, so they're probably affiliated with Godfrey to some degree. So that's a pretty good question. And that's like one of the things that does bother me is if the Crucible does predate Godfrey's order, then why does he command Crucible Knights rather than like their own thing? I didn't realize how wonky the little cloth piece jutted out while seated. Anyway. Hey Dylan, nice to see you again. You've always been willing to give From Software a pass on stuff related to protection constraints. With the growth and success of Elden Ring, you expected a little more from their future games. Well, I feel like with the DLC, they could have tied in things a lot more cleanly than they did. It's one thing for like the base game, but I feel like the DLC should be a little bit cleaner because so much has already been established that it should be a bit easier to work with, I would hope. Do you wonder if the Crucible Knights are the Horn Scent or related to them? I don't know, and it does really bother me that you can't bleed the Crucible Knights, so that makes them seem distinct enough, but Good question. And why didn't the Crucible Knights go on the Long March? We don't know. Or did they? Pixie wonders if the Crucible tree is a meta-ethical tree? Do you mean metaphysical? It is the tree of evolution, like a family tree of lineage of species. As far as the localization goes, like there's hits and misses, and I don't know. It's there are always going to be things that get lost in translation no matter the choices they make, but certain things could be a bit cleaner, I can admit. And of course, like, the focus on my channel is pointing out the differences, whereas the vast majority of the content is perfectly fine. But as they say, like, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down, so it's easier to get a bit jaded about that when you don't think about the, you know, entire context of everything else that you've been given. Dylan asks, could the Gate of Divinity in a near limb be related to the Crucible? That is one of the biggest questions that is remaining, and I wish we had an answer, but we don't. Hey Stella, nice to see you. True Connoisseur is not opposed to the upside down tree idea for the Shadow Tree, but you need more evidence than just the book image to really buy in. So, going back to what I was talking about a couple nights ago, I think it was, when we get the... It's probably the Shattered Stone Talisman. It's a linchpin stone, and they are spiritual anchors said to hold the ground in place and quell the fury of earthquakes. When this one shattered, the surrounding town fell into the broken earth. One account claimed that the moon itself had come tumbling down. As I'd mentioned about the linchpin stones, I believe it uses the same kanji as what's described as the stakes of America, so it could be like the linchpins of America. And so you might be able to think of the lands between as being something a lot more malleable than like a normal planet. I don't know. So there might be some justification that America could have altered the shape of the world when she separated the two realms, so to speak. But I wish we had a bit more about that. There might also be some like cultural context. I try to shy away from like drawing too many parallels between Shintoism and the game's mythology, because I do like to treat the game stuff as standing on its own for the most part. And when I do try to make other parallels, I try to keep it within the confines of other FromSoft games or cultural context kind of related to localization. So with all those disclaimers out of the way, take this next bit with a heavy grain of salt. It might be possible that the way that they set up the lands between might be somewhat analogous to the ideas of Tokuyo no Kuni, the land of reeds in like Shintoism, and Yomi. So Tokuyo no Kuni and Yomi, I'm not entirely sure if they're the same or if they're different, but Yomi is the underworld rather, and the land of reeds is where people reside, and Tokuyo no Kuni is also the place where spirits, Rei, Kami reside, and they can kind of cross realms. And one of the questions is whether or not it's like literally upside down. Tokuyo no Kuni is also called Nei no Kuni, and Nei, the kanji for that comes from root. And when we're in a place like Deeproot Depths, or the way that the Battlefield Priest booklet shows roots, might be like the land of the dead is where all is like the land of the roots, and these roots connected into the Erdtree to give it its luster, perhaps. I don't really fully buy into that stuff, and I do have questions about like how all that connects into like the land of reeds. Is it still entirely separate from everything? But that has been something that's like kind of like popped into mind as I've looked into this stuff. But I will definitely admit that the idea that the Shadow Tree is literally upside down from the Erdtree's roots is just kind of headcanon. So I don't know if I fully buy into it, but I think it's definitely attractive based off of the very little information that we have. But, you know, Just because an idea is attractive, that doesn't necessarily make it right. It's in a gazebo next to the first gargoyle. Thank you, Corn. Appreciate that. Yeah, and then, yeah, Crunchy did talk about this in his video. I don't remember his rationale for it. It was just one of those ideas that I listened to with an open mind. It was like, well, I'm not on board yet because there's not a lot of evidence. But when I saw this really made me reconsider Crunchy's thoughts. And as I was looking into things with like the Maribito and Nei no Kuni, I was like, this is kind of interesting. And of course, like part of the reason why I don't want to like bring it up even more is because there's going to be a ton of George R.R. Martin naysayers. It's like, oh no, he wrote the lore, guys, so this isn't right. How could a Japanese game have Japanese lore? George wrote it. So, what was I wearing? Not that. I remember I had the Godskin thing on. I did not want to wear this because it lowered my stats. Oh, right. It was the Great Jar. No. Oh, right. It was the Oathseeker set. Head. Dog just growled in its sleep. I don't remember what gauntlets I had on. That looks kind of decent, but whatever. I need to sneeze. Whew, managed to spare you guys that. Alright. You know, I think I'm gonna go with the all-knowing ones after all. Fashion souls be real. What was I even wearing before? It didn't bother me, like I wasn't a fan of it, but whatever, maybe I'll just stick with this. Whatever, okay. No, because now my helmet sticks out like a sore thumb. I'm spending way too much time on this. It's not important. Alright, whatever. I'm just going to stick with this. Alright. Hey, Will Turner, how's it going? Hey, appreciate that. And welcome on into the stream. Counting Sheep really feels like the DLC stepped up in world design, but feels rushed in parts with a lot of the bosses lacking characterization and a lack of lore content for certain areas. I have mixed feelings about that. Like, I wish there were more points of interest, and that doesn't necessarily mean like legacy dungeons for the DLC. Because there's really like Bellirots / Anir Lim, the Shadow Keep, and arguably Manus Metter, or like the Ruins of Rao. But there's not a lot of reason to like go back to a lot of places and really look at them in detail. Okay, yeah, this kind of stands out to me. Where was it? Oh, it's not on a monument. That's what was tripping me up. Because I definitely remembered it being by a gargoyle, but I thought it was like the one over here, I guess. The fact that it's on a corpse, that makes sense. Okay, now we can read the stuff about Deathroot. Oathseeker helm goes hard with the Black Knight armor. Unfortunately, I don't think I have that. Alright. Deeproot depths. At the very depths of the Erdtree's majestic roots lies the source of the Ansel and Shifra rivers. Here too begins the network of great tree roots that spread throughout the lands between. So, for the longest of times, I was of the opinion that the Great Tree was the Erdtree, because that's exactly what it's called in the Japanese version of the Tree and Beast Surcoat. So I had no real reason to believe that a Great Tree was supposed to be distinct from the Erdtree as we've been shown. But now all the stuff with the DLC separating definitively the Crucible from the Erdtree, could imply that the Great Tree's roots could have been the Crucible's roots, if we do believe that that was supposed to be a different tree of the Hornsent or the Shadow Tree or something like that. If that's the case, then this might be more supporting evidence to suggest that the Erdtree was once connected to the Crucible, and those roots are still present, and they might connect all the way back down through the land into another realm. So, just leaving that there for everyone's headcanon purposes. And once again, thank you, Korn, for telling me where that was, because I forgot. Yeah, this is the most ambitious and challenging DLC they've ever done. Honestly, I think they did the leveling stuff pretty, decently, all things considered. I just think a lot of the issues with the difficulty stems from how relentless the bosses are. Because they're just not... A lot of them aren't very fun to fight solo, for me at least. Maybe other people feel differently. So, right. Night Scout doesn't think the Crucible is outright separate. If the Crucible Knights, probably experts in it, consider the Erdtree the continued Crucible. Well, here's the thing. Obviously, we haven't gone into Rao yet, but Crucible Knight Devonia left the Erdtree to seek the origins of the Crucible. And I'm really on the fence if it's trying to say that it left the Erdtree to find the origin of the Erdtree and was looking into the Crucible. Because, just why not call it the Erdtree then? Why can't it just be direct? It really sucks having to play these language games and not even localization wise, but just actual semantics with stuff like this. It shouldn't be this obtuse trying to get some of the most basic facts of the game clear, I think. Phantom Leaves says, this map's also a clear reference to the Yggdrasil and its rivers. And yeah, I do wonder if, or how much Norse mythology could have played a role in the establishment of the mythos of Elden Ring. And it does interest me that rather than Hever Gelmir, we just have Mount Gelmir. So it is a little bit different. So not quite a one-to-one and parallel, at the very least. So not here yet. So as we come into the Stone Coffin Fissure, we will run into more of the Grave Birds. These ones will be tinged with purple, because they're sleepy boys. And we also get a bunch of Lookout Stones. I don't know if anybody's played this game, and if you haven't, I feel a little bit pity for you. A game on the Sega Genesis called Gunstar Heroes. These kind of two Lookout Stone worms put together into the shape of a human. Just kind of reminds me of that mini boss whenever I see these guys. One of my absolute all-time favorite shoot. Can I even call that a shooter? It's kind of like a shmup, a shooting mash 'em up. Anyway. Night Scout said, Devonia wants to research the history of the origins, but that doesn't mean it would have to be alien to the Erdtree. The Knights already know when the Crucible evolved into the Erdtree. So, the thing is, Devonia is the longest serving of Godfrey's Crucible Knights, which is kind of annoying that the oldest Crucible Knight doesn't know the origin of the Erdtree / Crucible. So that makes it seem as though it should predate the time of the Erdtree. And believe you me, I would love to be on the same page with you as far as like the interpretation goes, that the Erdtree is the Crucible. Like literally, I don't think... So I originally thought they were never supposed to have been like truly distinguished, other than saying that the Crucible was more or less Godfrey's Erdtree, rather than like Radagon's variant of it that's present in the lands between now. Or maybe present should be the best word, but more like manifested in the lands between now. But the thing is, like, even if I believe it, I feel like it's becoming almost an impossible task to try and convince other people about the way that I feel about it, partially because of how much is kind of obscured by localization choices at times. When flying, not in the normal sense. It just feels like such an uphill battle. I actually cut a huge section out of my video about the Grace of Old, just on the off chance that my understanding of the Crucible was going to be challenged with the DLC. So it took a lot longer to produce because I was trying to... What's the word? Not truncate, but simplify? Yeah, maybe. Simplify my arguments in that video. Which is, it's going to be a trip going back and looking at my older content and seeing like how my thoughts on it may have changed. Alright. Night Scout said, if the Hornsent had their own tree that was vandalized, the Grandam and Potentate Warrior would have probably said so outright, like they do about literally everything else. Well, that's like one of those things where I don't think the absence of evidence can be evidence. Because, I mean, they do say that they were betrayed, and they talk about Marika's sins, and we're told that burning the Erdtree is like the first cardinal sin. Messmer's Kindling says it was left with the... damn it, so I did go too low. They say that Messmer's Kindling was left with the first sin, which is kind of a trip. So I'm probably going to have to warp back. I don't think I can get back that way. Oh, maybe I can. Okay. No, I can't. It's annoying. Oh, wait, no, we're good. Or maybe I need to... Oh, right. We come back around and out that way. So I think I need to go this way. I know I kind of missed... okay, so I do need to go all the way up. I kind of missed this my first way through, and then I was coming back to like look at stuff, and then I found where I'm trying to head to. Alright. Counting Sheep says they think they've pushed dodge roll gameplay to its limits and we'll see something more new next time. Maybe. I mean, they also did do more with Sekiro, and this is kind of produced at the same time before they could learn the lessons of Sekiro. So it makes sense that there are differences. So I'm definitely confident that they can improve the formula a bit moving forward. Wait, didn't I do this last time and it didn't go anywhere? Or did I just not look down enough? Maybe this isn't a lethal drop. It just like looks farther. Okay. The Crucible Knights would be researching the Crucible, but the birth of the Erdtree would be contemporary in their own era, and thus they'd know all about it, especially working for America. So then the question becomes, like, why... never mind. I don't want to talk about it like that. Let me try to think of a better way to formulate this thought. If the Crucible is the primordial form of the Erdtree, I feel like that contradicts the idea that we're told that it's born as the Erdtree later. But, you know, that could just be splitting hairs. It could be like metaphorical language, which I kind of hate having to justify then what should be taken more metaphorically versus literally at times. But I mean, that's something that we already do in the game, so I can't be too upset about that, I suppose. But I don't have to be happy about it either. Kyle says, why can't the Erdtree just be the part of the Crucible, but the Crucible is not the Erdtree? The Erdtree grafting onto and taking over the chunk of the Crucible could one day overcome the original tree. Maybe the Knight wants to find out what caused the original tree to form, not the golden Erdtree grafted to it. So that's kind of the idea that I think that they're trying to work with. But what kind of annoys me about that is the inconsistency of the imagery that's associated with the Crucible and the things like Spira and the questions about the Elden Ring's involvement with all that. Velvet Sword of St. Trina. So that's the thing, like, if a lot of the stuff was a bit more consistent on that front, I would be able to come to a better foundation on which to build my headcanon, I suppose. Dylan thinks that the Crucible, the Erdtree, the Gate of Divinity, and grafting are all essentially being the same thing in some way. I think that's what they're trying to go for. But there is still enough ambiguity for me where I'm left wondering if the Crucible is indeed just Godfrey's tree and not necessarily related to the Horn Scent after all. And then, like, if the Horn Scent were haunted by the fire giants, then did Marika kill the fire giants just to get their flame of ruin with which she would use to later betray the Horn Scent? Like, I could definitely see that being the case, but we've got nothing to work with that. Like, it just has to come from headcanon trying to piece things together. Dylan says, the reference to primordial matter in Godric's Gilded Great Shield has always stuck out to me, and that is one description which has always been localized really badly as far as comparing it to the Japanese. I'll just share what I have for that in case anybody in chat is not familiar. Alright, so I'm just going to share like the final paragraph, which is different. Its coding, imitating the genesis of the Erdtree, possesses a red hue. It is the color of reminiscence. So the Crucible is definitely linked to the beginnings of the Erdtree, and it was supposed to have had a red hue, which would kind of put it at odds with like the Horn Scent having kind of white bark on their trees and near a limb. So the Erdtree itself the Crucible itself could have been a completely distinct thing, which is why I'm not trying to say it's one thing definitively. And it could have been the Shadow Tree after all, and maybe the Shadow Tree was a bit more red in the past, but yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. It does seem like the Crucible is more affiliated with the Shadowlands because of the Beasthorn description saying that the beasts of the realm of Shadow were more directly influenced by the Crucible. It doesn't say it quite like that, but close enough. So the whole Crucible thing being the roots of the Erdtree seems attractive to me on a lot of levels, but it's just never... There's just like never any closure, I feel. Nice Scott says, burning the Erdtree is a sin to the Golden Order. The Hornsent may have never had any Erdtree equivalents. Also based on the talismans from the Finger Ruins, the Erdtree might have started as a seed. A seed would imply it was planted, not a sprout that was grafted. Heck, with Marika's trauma over her clan, she might refuse any form of grafting. So those are all really good points, and I definitely appreciate them. So allow me to pick them apart a little bit. Do I not have it yet? I don't have it yet. Damn it. It sucks because the really good seed talismans say like these were seeds that were not thought to exist. Perhaps this is supposed to harken to the birth of the Erdtree, and saying like the Erdtree came with the seed with the two fingers is probably like one of the strongest indicators that if the Crucible does predate the Erdtree, and we're told in Siluria's tree that it is tree-shaped, that would make it more distinct from the Erdtree itself. But then, of course, we have the question of the chicken and the egg, where if you have an Erdtree seed, where does it come from? Of course, we have like magic explanations to kind of wave our hands at, which I think is, you know, perfectly sensible. I was trying to roll. Damn it. I'm gonna have to go this way. Alright. It's a good thing I still have that anti-magic talisman on, perhaps. Alright, so let me check that again. It would imply a seed was planted, not a sprout that was grafted. So yeah, if it was a seed, where did that seed come from? Would that imply that there was another tree? I mean, arguably, yeah, because that's where you get seeds from, but... Good questions, though. Definitely appreciate them. I'll need to think about that stuff a bit more. What are my thoughts on the stone coffins? I'll talk about that more when I am like a little bit further and done ranting about the Erdtree stuff. But thanks for trying to get me on topic for the area. Kyle agrees, while the Hornsent are important, they don't think that makes them right or original. Their spirit might have just been another idea of what's holy. We can't discount the old Crucible guy statues. I don't discount them. Oh, I forgot to show it off. So I have wondered whether or not those dudes and their statues are analogous to the kind of like weird thorny looking like things coming out of this. And so is the dude holding on to the bud on those statues this coiling thing here? I don't really know how I feel about that. A lot of that stuff does seem like it could be analogous to the way like Radagon is presented in the Radagon icon, which I'm not sure if I have on this character. Yeah, I do. So they are kind of analogous to the Miranda flower type things behind Radagon on this picture here. A seed can be planted, grown slightly, then moved and grafted. That's true as well. With Spirit, the Hornsent just manifested a normalized Crucible, like the formula of the Crucible, you guess, and it's just white spirit energy with no order or life associated with it. So what it means by like a normal Crucible is that it seems to take the Crucible's energies and by spiraling it, it normalizes it, or what's the other word for it? I guess like directs it into a normalized flow. Rectified flow? I think that's technically like the scientific term for it. So it is possible that all of the spirit stuff doesn't actually relate to the Erdtree after all. or not the Erdtree, but the Crucible after all, and they're just like analogous or adjacent to it, I definitely want to consider that. But I don't think most people are going to read it that way. So part of my difficulty comes trying to reconcile all these descriptions in my head, and then also being able to try to present that to others. And that's the hard part, really, right there. I don't think I'm going to come here. Great Bloodwards. And those dudes will just keep firing. If the seed wasn't created outright, it might have been brought from space with the fingers of an Elden beast. The beast arena already seems to depict Erdtrees across the galaxy. And there is also the consideration to make that, like, the Elden beast itself is kind of shaped similarly to Siluria's spear. And then what, if any, connection does the Crucible have to the actual Elden Ring? Like, not to bring up the parasite theory, because a lot of people hate it, but to bring up the parasite theory, because it's kind of attractive in some ways. It's possible that the Crucible could have been, like, the natural form of life in the Elden Ring, or in the world, and then the Elden Ring... Sorry, the Two Fingers took the Elden Ring and grafted it into the world to kind of absorb life. I'm just articulating this thought terribly. So there could have been a lot of latent life in the lands between, and the Two Fingers could have come onto the scene with some connection to the Elden Beast and the Elden Ring to take the life in the lands between and funnel it back into the Greater Will. But like I said, I definitely know a lot of people aren't super fond of that theory. So the Crucible could be a non-Elden Beast related tree, maybe? I don't know how I feel about that. And some people also think that the Elden Beast itself could be the Crucible, which is, you know, attractive for its own reasons too. Because at the very least, Siluria's spear, I think this is too far, does kind of resemble the tail of the Elden Beast as well. But why is it called a tree then? Well, I mean, the Elden Beast kind of is a tree in a way, if it's like part of the Erdtree. Anyway, good comments, everybody. Mike Bailey, welcome into the stream. Are there multiple Erdtrees in the Elden Beast fight? Multiple Crucibles across the galaxy? Multiple Metas? That's a very good question. It does seem to be a liminal space. And I guess the thing is, if the Elden Ring is a metaphysical construct that has power over the universe, that could be one way of symbolizing that kind of, I don't want to say like multi-dimensional reach, but maybe that is kind of an accurate term. But that's a really good question. So some people have wondered whether or not like the Elden Beast is connected to a network of other trees, which kind of all tie back into the Greater Will, and if they're funneling wills back to the Greater Will and stuff like that. But, you know, all that stuff is pretty heavy conjecture. Dylan asks, where do the stone worm dudes come from? You've never really understood what they're about. I don't know. They do seem to be related to gravity magic, and they have purple eyes, but they're just kind of around. They're also obviously around a ton of Everjails, but we don't really even know who built the Everjails. A lot of people wondered if they were the Nox. we don't really have any Everjails in the Rao civilization ruins either. So they're just kind of there. Good question, though. Night Scott said, if the Erdtree existed to funnel energy to the Greater Will, the Greater Will might not abandon or neglect the planet entirely. It depends, because depending on like the Finger Slayer blade invoking the ire of the Greater Will, it may not have fully abandoned it, but it might not just be too interested in the particulars as long as it's receiving its kickbacks, I guess, if you want to phrase it that way. True Connoisseur says, the Stoneworm dudes seem kind of meteor-coated. Yes. Alright. Now setting aside all of those rambling remarks about the Erdtree and the Crucible for now, which we'll get into later when we go into the Rao ruins, let's go ahead and talk about St. Trina, the Stone Fissure, and the Velvet Sword of St. Trina. Silver Sword of St. Trina, now stained the color of velvet, inflicts eternal sleep. When St. Trina was abandoned, the faint, light purple mist coalesced into an intoxicating deep purple cloud. Unique skill, Mists of Eternal Sleep. Releases a velvety purple mist that spreads across a wide frontal area. Afflicts foes with eternal sleep. So this weapon's really cool. It's, virtually identical to the base variant of the Sword of Trina. The only difference is like the scaling. Or this does more magic damage with the thing. So. Oh, this one looks more like a rapier than this. Are the models different? I guess they kind of are. Interesting. Okay. So, you can kind of dual wield these together, but Eternal Sleep isn't that great except in like specific scenarios. I guess certain weapons or certain enemies are like a lot weaker. Apparently, Regalia and the Rune Bearers are weak to sleep, which will be nice to know. I wonder how good it is on the God skins now that I think about it. So, okay, setting all of that stuff aside, I think now we're at a good angle for it. Maybe not. I think we need to go this way. Sweet. Alright, so as we come into the fissure, we see a bunch of the stone coffins, and there's one in particular which has a bunch of putrescent purplish green red ooze coming out of it because it's been like broken open, and it's all seeking down towards the garden where we will meet St. Trina later and fight the Putrescent Knight. So now that we've picked up a couple items, actually I'm not going to read those items until we get the sorcery that's going to be like right around the corner. So stand by. We get a bunch of congealed putrescents, and we will even find some more putrescent dudes over here in a second. Mass of putrescents. I think we're safe over here. Yeah, okay. Congealed putrescents. Bruise-colored putrescence that oozes from stone coffins congealed into a large viscous lump. Found underground in the land to where the stone coffins drift. The putrescence is what remains of the impure lives kept within the stone coffins. So, coffins obviously keep the remains of the dead within them, and putrescence is the remains of impure lives. So, the people who were given, I guess these aren't really burials, who were entombed in these coffins were tainted somehow, which we don't really know how that came to be. They could just be tainted by death in general, perhaps, but well, yeah, don't know what else to say about that. So let's move on to massive putrescence. Sorcery originating from the putrid liquor of the stone coffins flings a great mass of putrescence that bathes its landing area in ghost flame, charging increases potency. In an age long past, death was burned by ghost flame. Even the remains of tainted flesh were given equal treatment in death. So, ghost flame being related to putrescence is very interesting to me, rather than it just being a different kind of thing. So there's a big relation between like death, curses, rancor, ghost flame, and putrescence, and like being tainted, which is all worthy of consideration. So because these coffins contain impure lives, that does make it seem to me as though they should be potentially distinct from Marika, if she's a shaman, and if the shaman are pure after all because they're Miko. But who knows, maybe they're wrong. This could be potentially related to the Newman. They could be potentially related to the ancient dynasties. But the ancient dynasty stuff and its architecture doesn't seem to match this stuff very well. The other guy's going to come back to life. Alright. Not too worried about the little oozes coming after me. And to reply to Night Scout's comment about the kickbacks, I mean, keep in mind that the Greater Will does allegedly bring the Tarnished back to get its kickbacks. So it may not have fully abandoned the realm, depending on how much one wants to believe in Nia and or the Two Fingers. Dylan likes the idea of the stoneworm balls being related to the Glowmide Queen. Alright, so before going further, one thing that baffled me was that we have those who live in death here in the Putrescent Cave, but what's notable about these dudes is that they themselves are covered with putrescence, because they've got the purplish black goo on their bodies. So this might suggest that the putrescence, the tainted flesh within them, can possess bones, and that might explain those who live in death in general. Like, some people were wondering if those who live in death in the base game were reanimated by Ghost Flame specifically. I was kind of against that idea because it seemed like Ghost Flame was supposed to be distinct from Deathroot, which was said to reanimate these guys. But after seeing these dudes in the DLC, that made me really reconsider things, because we do actually see a couple necromancers in a couple of the catacombs that are able to reanimate skeletons with some kind of undisclosed sorcery, I guess, for lack of a better term. So not all reanimatable skeletons were reanimated through Deathroot. And so I feel like this kind of gives us another angle to approach like the skeletons and try to reconcile whether they are those who live in death versus those lost in death versus something else, i.e. like spirits possessing skeletons through ghost flame, curses, or like putrescence. So yeah. Alright, Phantom Leaves, you have a good night, and thanks for sticking around. You love how the purple sword looks, though. Night Scott says, Trina's Eternal Sleep has a really weird name, considering that it's not eternal for almost anything, not even the Putrescent Knight. Supposedly the name for Eternal Sleep status is similarly misleading in the Japanese text. I think so. I would need to double check, though. If only we could speak to the Skellies. If only they could speak back. The skeletons have deathblight traits even without signs of deathblight in the fissure or on the boats. What would you consider deathblight traits for this? True Connoisseur says the Putrescent Knight was seemingly reanimated by Trina, so maybe the skeletons are the same. So I think it's kind of the opposite. We've got... It'll be a bit easier to talk about when we have the remembrance or the item associated with the remembrance. But the Putrescent Knight, because its putrescence cannot rest, I think because it's cursed or like filled with tainted, cursed flesh. And Saint Trina's velvety sleep was finally able to bring it rest. And because it was able to bring it rest, it's kind of like a form of succor. Sweet. So we get a really cool Erdtree symbol by this random ass Spirit Misbegotten, which is actually Miquella, guys. Actually, unironically, considering that Miquella abandoned Saint Trina, it would be really funny if his base form was supposed to have been a Misbegotten, considering like how many people feel about Radagon's connection to Misbegotten. Trying to get it to do more of its cool Miquella magic, because it's virtually identical to the way that Radagon does his stuff, although it's obviously more of a white tinted hue. And maybe this does set his grace up differently than like Morgoth's, which is more of a I don't want to say golden gold. I was gonna say like piss gold. But it's a little bit crass, but I can't think of a better term, so you guys get to enjoy that. I rolled way too early. Oh, this dude's a lot less tanky with blessings. Holy crap. Multi-layered Ring of Light. When I fought him, I just knocked him off the edge because it's funny. Alright. Incantation of Those Who Served Miquella. Produces a multi-layered ring of golden light and fires it forwards, inflicting continuous damage on those struck by it. Charging extends duration and increases potency. This light ring incantation was cultivated by a tradition separate from Golden Order fundamentalism. The little slime that could. So yeah, this is one of the only references to the Golden Order in the DLC, and I think that might be specifically the only one referencing Golden Order fundamentalism, which makes sense that it differs from Golden Order fundamentalism because it has Miquella's Erdtree symbol behind it rather than the Golden Order fundamentalist sigil. And we get a bunch more Nectar Blood Virgins. And one of the coolest like little advantages in the DLC, a bunch of creatures seemingly charmed or enthralled, maybe not like literally, by like Saint Trina, I suppose. So, what's the word? I don't want to say humble. Calming? Relaxing? I'm failing to find the right word. But anyway, it's the word that I can't think of type scene right here. Okay, so Night Scott says the Deathblight traits for the skeletons would be the way they try to reassemble. Okay. You wonder if there's a prior Deathblight event in the past tied to the Deathbirds? Maybe that's why the Briar Great Shield of Yokai depicts a knight fighting skeletons too. I forgot that it actually fights skeletons on that, now that you mention it. Right, so because of all of this putrescent stuff and the Dancing Lion having Deathblight in the Rao Ruins, I think I'm going to have to finally legitimately consider whether or not Deathblight actually predates Godwyn, but not necessarily Deathroot, and whether or not the basilisks are their own thing predating Godwyn, which makes a lot of sense, because it was always a pain trying to figure out like what the hell's going on with them? Were they all infected by Godwin's death root? Like, were they changed? What were they like before? But that wasn't that big of a deal, but trying to explain why death birds of all things were able to inflict death blight was very awkward. So maybe there is an out after all. Counting Sheep wonders if this misbegotten was left here by Mikola to stop people from reaching St. Trina. I could buy that for sure, especially because it's like the lighter hue of gold. It's unfortunate that we don't have like the Leda occultation grace or whatever it's called, iris, which is of a unalloyed like light gold hue. Actually, this doesn't say it's unalloyed gold, but maybe something else does. So maybe unalloyed gold is whiter gold after all. I would need to double check some of the text in the DLC, because I honestly don't remember it being mentioned very much at all. Serene? That's a really good word. Not the word I was thinking of, but definitely like describes it perfectly, MK. And nice to see you again. Curiously, these animals near St. Trina don't have the extra horns a lot of the DLC animals have. That's an interesting observation. Maybe that shows that the higher one's spirituality, the less likely they are to be charmed by something like Mikola. Because that's a good point. Why do people assume death only came after Godwin? Not death, death blight and like death roots. Because Godwin is very heavily death blight coded, with considering how his golden lightning suffused with the death causes Tarnish to become death blighted, and all the things with like the what's it called? Not the sickle, the scythe, the Eclipse Shotel. The Eclipse Shotel also has death blight, and it's related to Godwin. Oh, please, grant me the courage to fly to your feet, my dearest Saint Trina. Right. So, you have to have courage, take the plunge. Behold death tarnished. No, you. Did I need to level up? Let's just do this. Because I expect to die to this guy. Actually, maybe not. Like, alright. If y'all don't want Putrescent Knight spoilers, now is probably the time to leave. Because I have a strat which kind of invalidates him and kind of makes the fight look like a joke. And I'm sure it'll be a lot easier with blessings. I did use my Mimic just because this fight was slow. Like, I didn't enjoy it. But this is definitely one that I could have soloed. One of the weirdest things about the eclipse is how Lutel's Japanese text says that apparently the eclipse did work once in the past. Well, it doesn't say anything about the eclipse, but that her demigod was revived. Past tense, yes. That Lutel got an Erdtree barrel after the eclipse worked, not for the effort of it being a guard. He does immense damage, but his attacks are relatively easy to dodge. You love this fight personally? Hey Paisan, nice to see you again. I kind of hated it just because of how slow it was. Alright, so now that we got our cinematic thing going on, oh, that was the second time around. Okay. For some reason, I thought it was only going to cycle once that time. Maybe because it was like the very first attack of the encounter. That was kind of silly in general, I suppose. Here I am talking mad stuff, and then I just get like one shot. Alright, so the biggest tip to deal with the Putrescent Knight is to just walk backwards. And he like won't touch you for the majority of the fight. It's kind of silly. You didn't love this fight, but it wasn't terribly offensive in any way. It's definitely a lot more annoying with no blessings because he does so much damage. I don't think I healed after my mimic thing. Oh, I wasn't two-handing, so I tried to punch. Alright, so we gotta wait to turn around and back up. I don't like the changing of aggro. Oh yeah, my mimic can tank no damage because it's not leveled up. That was just terrible rolling on my part. Okay, I deserve that. I should probably level up that mimic if he's taking that much damage. Sure, being at like what, level 4 doesn't help. What am I doing? Alright. The jab to Midir wasn't long enough. They had to tap themselves. Is this one actually longer than the Midir one? Well, definitely the run back is super annoying. Hey, Paisan. Thanks for becoming a channel member. Oh, now I can make out your avatar is a Moog Albinork. Enjoy the emotes. May chaos take the world. What am I doing? I'm gonna get got. Oh, and I didn't even pull out my thing. Well, this is not the best start. Well, that's definitely not the best start. Just gotta back up. Oh, he's gonna attack like 5 times, I think. Oh wow, I did a lot of damage. Or the mimic did. Let's keep backing up. Can't tell what attack that was. I normally had a shield on, so I would just like guard counter the last attack in his like 3-hit chain here. I tried rolling again. That was messy. That should have been a lot cleaner on my part. Should be phasing. Yep, okay. I tried jumping, I was way too slow. The one move which does annoy me a lot in this fight is the backwards, or not the backwards, the ring magic fire. Because it's really hard to judge the distance. I was not trying to roll. That one right there. Yeah, because I don't know when to jump it. That's like the only one that actually gets me a little bit tilted. I rolled too early. Thought I was going to die at that one. This has been really messy. I should not win playing like this. But I did. Alright, Legend Filled, Remembrance of Putrescence. Heal up before resting? Because why not? I need to sneeze again. Alright. You'd expect this knight to ride a bull, not a horse, with all the bullhead areas around, or the bullhead stashes around. That would actually be really cool too, yeah, now that you mention it. Counting Sheep doesn't like its design, to be honest. I think it'd be better, smaller, and as a regular enemy to roam Cerulean Coast. That would be really cool. It would definitely make that area more distinct. But then the question would be, like, what would you put here instead? Like, I don't mind Putrescent Knight so much now that I've, like, figured out the fights, but he was just kind of, like, one of the most annoying parts for me trying to face a boss like that was trying to determine when they were going to do, like, a combination attack and when I could punish them. And this just eventually made it so that all I was doing on the fight was more or less just backing up and punishing, like, 2 or 3 specific moves. Which, I mean, that's definitely the right strat, but I don't know, I just don't like to fight that way. Dylan finds a good number of the you have to jump attacks in the DLC are harder to read. Yeah, so like this one, I did not think you were supposed to jump over the flames. And I definitely got killed by rolling backwards from like muscle memory a couple times on my DLC playthrough the first time through, when he would cast the fire that goes like straight back, and then he would follow it up with his cleaver strike. And I think I've got that one of those times it happened to me on my video about the DLC, my like impressions essentially. And thanks for the GGs, everybody. Dylan had a lot of problems as a caster for this boss, and you cannot survive more than 2 hits. Yeah, I couldn't survive more than 2 hits myself. I feel like as a caster, he moves around enough that I'm a little bit surprised that it wasn't too bad, unless you're like using a longer winding up spell. Part of the reason why I used my Mimic was just because there was not going to be a good time for me to actually be able to cast Rot Breath off on him. And I didn't really want to do all of that damage manually without blessings. A third type of Godskin Knight would have been cool here. True story, but then I would have been kind of mad if we had Godskins affiliated with Mikola. Not gonna lie about that. Alright, so yeah, as we drop down here, we get a bunch of kind of like white lilies, and these ones are kind of reminiscent of the Trina lilies, but they're different somehow, kind of like how in the Erdtree there are pink butterflies that are not Scarlet Ionian ones, so you just kind of have to deal with it. I guess I don't know what to make of them. But they're all kind of like wilted and faded. And maybe that's supposed to be because they represent Trina and she was abandoned by Mikola. Maybe that's my kind of headcanon for that now that I think about it. So now that we've beaten the Putrescent Knights, we have the remembrance of the Putrescent Knight hewn into the Shadow Tree. All tainted flesh eventually becomes putrescence, and this clump of it imbibed St. Trina's nectar, which granted it eternal rest. And so it was that putrescence became her knight. So it was granted eternal rest, but it's not exactly resting when we come by, which is really annoying. I don't like those types of inconsistencies where you get text which says one thing, but then the game does like something else entirely. So the way that I look at it, I talked about it briefly before. I think I still have the Baldachin blessing. The favor allows one to forget any aches and pains. In death, there's only peace, for in death there can be no sensation. So because all of this stuff is putrescent, it's cursed, which means that they're still suffering after death, and so they're not resting. So I think part of the reason why the putrescence became her knight is because it was kind of the first time that they could be offered a pseudo form of salvation or respite from the eternal suffering of the damned of being putrescence, I guess. But I could be wrong about that, but I think it works. Putrescence Cleaver. It's really not that important. I am so upset that you can't throw this, though. Man, I would have rocked the hell out of this weapon if you could throw it like the knight does. I was really excited when we saw it in the trailer. So I'm really disappointed that all it has is kind of a very, very short-range slam. Vortex of Putrescence. It's pretty much the same thing as the other one. Sorcery used by the Putrescent Knights. Launches a whirl of putrescent jets that bathe the surroundings of all they touch in ghost flame. In an age long past, death was burned by ghost flame. Even the remains of tainted flesh were given equal treatment in death. So that's all that. Oh, do I want to talk about this stuff yet? No, not really. Yeah, it's kind of past this point. I'll just leave that stuff there. So I guess it's really just his remembrance itself, which is the important bit. Here I am trying to like manually go there. A twin bird down here would have been nice. That'd been wild. Paisan didn't struggle with this guy much in their first run, but you were using the sunflower weapon against him, and then apparently he's very weak to holy. Okay. Yeah, we could have had a dragon called Mirror. Jack says, as someone with chronic depression, sometimes the themes of these games hit a little too hard. Damn. I wish I had something better to say off the top of my head other than nothing? What can I say right here? Nothing. I'll try to figure it out, and I will come back to that comment. Oh, as an intelligence caster, you weren't getting enough damage. You did better when you switched to gravity. Kyle says, it kind of feels like FromSoft abandoned both Trina and the Glowmite Queen and combined their lore to be more vague to mean anything. Well, to be fair, so I think I talked about this briefly the other night on stream. Maybe it was in the Discord, I don't recall. That we don't know when the original concept for the Putrescent Knight was created in development. And there's a good chance that it could have been originally slated to have been like a base game boss or something like that. But they couldn't fit it in anywhere. And so at one point in development, it could have been related to the Glowmite Queen. But then a lot of that stuff got changed, and so its eternal file name wouldn't have changed, and that doesn't necessarily mean that Saint Trina really has anything to do with the Glowmite Queen, and I just don't see any of those connections. So this is one of those cases of the cut content where I just take very dismissively, I guess. So yeah. If only FromSoft had a skeleton of a horse, write its own skin and call it a night. Yeah. You're bummed they didn't give us multi-ash boss weapons when you ash with R2 versus R1? I'm not sure what you're saying there. Are you saying like... Oh, you just mean like the constant spins like the cleaver does? So stuff more like the Sword of Night and Flame with the fire and the magic. You wish we got a little bit more dialogue out of Saint Trina. Of the demigods we can talk to, she gets the least to say. Of the demigods we talked to, she's doing some pretty heavy lifting there. Saint Trina Disciples Cookbook. Tier 3 or page 3, whatever. Alright. So the absolute design of Saint Trina is so cool, though. Just the fact that it kind of looks like it's floating in water, or she's floating in water. the whole flower child imagery, the fact that it doesn't really have like a head like one would expect, and it's just kind of like cradling itself. It's just so wild. So this is some really far out stuff that I'm going to offer you guys in chat for now, but if Saint Trina was part of Miquella and Saint Trina is part flower, then does that mean that Miquella's parents were part flower as well? We do have kind of millennia forming into the Scarlet Ionian flower itself, if you think about it, like she buds when she dies. So maybe that implies something about Marika and or Radagon that's worth consideration. But if there is more of a theme of that at play with Marika and Radagon, and that like the Erdtree represents their psyche or something like that, it does leave us a lot of questions about like the Carian children and even the Golden lineage, and maybe their situation is different because they are not parthenogenicized from Maragon, so they're not like fully flower people. I don't know. The Radagon icon has flowers? True story, yeah. Still sad we didn't get a sleep swamp area. It has the same poses as the Abductor Virgins and the Catacomb Sorcerers. That's another reason why Kyle thinks they combined the Glowmite Queen and Trina. I'm kind of strongly against it, because... well, maybe you're saying combined, I don't know. Because I feel like the Glowmite Queen is just forgotten, like Velka. Trina's the baby, though. It's weird. Paisan says, lore aside, Saint Trina's design is absolutely perfect in your opinion. It would have been really cool if we fought like a giant flowery version of Saint Trina, because I wouldn't have expected that. So like seeing the depiction of Saint Trina / Miquella as just kind of like a girl with purple hair, that was one thing, that was okay. But actually getting up close and personal, relatively speaking here, with Saint Trina and seeing it being much more of an ethereal thing than I ever would have expected was a very pleasant surprise. But yeah, I do wish that there was a little bit more with it in general. And of course, I wish we had more remnants of the cut Frenzy Flame quest with like the nomadic merchants and Saint Trina's ties to that quest in the DLC. But alas, we don't. You think this is posed as the same as the Twin Armor Knight set? I would say that's a little bit different. But I guess I'll pull it out just to show you guys. Because the flower thing itself doesn't really have arms to like hold it like her. But I get what you mean though. Paisan said, you thought the vines in the Radagon depictions were the impenetrable thorns? Well, they do have flowers on them themselves, so let's go ahead and pull these back up. So there do seem to be some impenetrable thorns like underneath the vines, kind of. But, or not the vines, but like the flower buds, but there are definitely flower buds on it. Pigsy says, Gek is not like Velka. Gek is central to the creation of the Golden Order, so the whole story. Velka is flavored that doesn't matter that much. Well, that was, you know, Gwyn's wife was Velka, so it's definitely central. Counting Sheep says, we're not getting another DLC, right? So Miyazaki has made it sound like they have no plans to make another DLC, but they have also said that they haven't necessarily shut the door on Elden Ring, but that doesn't mean that they're planning anything either. All these Goombas over here. Taking their little items. Jack Irish wonders if all of the Outer Gods are just part of the Greater Will. If all of them are just two sides of the same coin, they're just different aspects of it. It definitely seems like that could be the case if the Greater Will isn't entirely against an order of Scarlet Rot. Oh yeah, this gets wonky if you try to do this. So we can imbibe nectar or leave. Is she facing us? No, okay. I'm just going to leave that alone for now, and we can go visit our friend Tyler. What's the relationship between Radagon and the Shadow Tree? Both are associated with the impenetrable thorns. Are they related to the Bloodstar? Are they related to sin as a concept? It's not stated. I do tend to think that there's supposed to be a connection between them because of the impenetrable thorns. And, okay, before talking to Tyler, I guess I will do it now since I forgot to do it earlier. This guy right here... What the hell did I just try to pull out? I'm afraid I'm going to pull out a Divine Blessing or something. This guy right here seems like he's got Shadow Tree imagery going on and also Radagon imagery going on. So, alright, let's pull this out. So these like really weird branches kind of resemble what we see going on like right here. But obviously the Shadow Tree has no buds like the statue does. And when we compare this statue once again to the Radagon icon, there seems to be a little bit of overlaps between these designs. And this could all just be coincidental, but I tend to think that it seems likely that the Shadowlands would have been separated after Radagon met Rennala at the very least. And so, does that coincide with the birth of the Shadow Tree? Probably not, but then again, we don't know what is technically the Shadow Tree versus like the Erdtree. So, the thing which has like the sap pouring out of it could be the Shadow Tree, and the second stalk could be something else. But I think the Avatar Shadow Tree Avatar flower thing says it has a second stalk, which implies that it's all one organism, which is, it doesn't look like it should be one organism, but that's how it's kind of described, I guess. So it's kind of open to interpretation there. Now let's go back to Tyler. And Calix Natura, nice to see you again. And Operator, welcome back. That talisman has you side-eyeing Radagon a little bit. Marriages of convenience, eh? Maybe. You need to drink 8 times? Okay, damn. I didn't realize there's that many. I thought it coincided with his quest here. TLEA does not deserve this disrespect. Yes, he does, Matthew Sargent. I almost misread your name as Master Sergeant, which is kind of funny. A black flame swamp. Trina was a really big missed opportunity. Can you imagine if there's a third phase of the final boss fight where we have to fight a bodiless Mikola? He has Tyler energy early in his side quest, and late game he becomes Swolier. Okay. You wonder if the Shadow Tree represents Marika and Radagon, intertwined but yet the same. That's kind of where my thoughts are on it for right now. Yeah. The multi-bloom statue has a detail that a lot of people overlook. The bloom on the central branch is bigger on this statue than the bloom on the single branch statue. So it depends where you look at it, because the bloom can grow on the different ones. Yes. Do you have any idea on the connection between Smith script and runes, and why Mesmer and Yolan's weapons are inscribed with it? I have not paid attention to Mesmer and Yolan's weapons as far as the smiths go. Oh, because you mean they like reappear. Okay, I see what you mean. But in general, I think that the smith script is that they saw glowing gold within molten metal, and from that they were able to either read souls or like develop script from it, because they are runes essentially and have memories within them, and equipment has memories in it by virtue of like ashes of war, because spirit ash contains memories and whatnot. So it's not the cleanest way to describe it, but hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down there. It being one organism harkens back to America and Radagon. Two beings in one attempting to subdue the other, even though they are one. Yes. And I've wondered whether or not the Shadow Tree, the second one. So let's say that the one that has the sap is supposed to represent America originally. During the Age of Abundance, the sap was depleting and she was freaking out. Her epoch of life was coming to an end. Then she has Radagon go study Golden Order stuff to prevent the blessings of the Erdtree from fading completely. Next thing you know, he might come up with this tree to literally seal the Erdtree so that way the sap stops blessing or bleeding, I guess. Might be another way to look at the imagery of these two stalks, I suppose. But, you know, again, just floating some ideas out there. And then Counting Sheep asks, did the Smith script have anything to do with the coded sword? And I'm assuming also the Cipher Pata. I think fundamentally there might be a similar principle going on. And it's strange to me that we're told that the Two Fingers gave the people their words at some point, the words of their faith. But I guess it doesn't necessarily mean that the Fingers were the first ones to come up with the ideas of like runes in general. And the Smith script people could have been first. But why then did the Smith script people like fall out of fashion? And then why were like the Two Fingers given more precedence other than like the disconnection between like America and her Two Fingers, which we never hear any about? I don't know. Paisan says, it looks like two trees making out, to be honest. Oh, are you familiar with that subject, bro?
I had something I wish to tell you. I'm heading south. I've recalled something that Sir Moore said. He discovered deep purple water lilies blooming on the southern shore. That must be where St. Trina was left to wither away. I'm heading south, to the shore Sir Moore mentioned.
So Moore tells... Wait, Moore is dead. What the hell? I guess this... Oh, okay, I guess that would make sense. So Moore... Tyler asked Moore to get the syrup thing so he could make his poison. So Moore discovered it through the putrescence, I guess. That would explain the ebony black concoction mixed by Tiolier, a condensed somniferous elixir purported to be capable of putting even an ancient dragon to sleep. For an ordinary mortal, a single sip would assuredly result in swift and certain death. Tiolier thought of St. Trina's sleep when he created this, but the ebony sleep he concocted had not the sweetness of nectar nor the gentleness of rest's embrace. Okay, so this finally makes sense to me as to like why it's so different. So he thinks he probably got something related to Trina via Moore, but this is really just putrescence, and so it's just death and not sleep. That's going to be like my headcanon for this moving forward. I guess those things that we saw were Trina's lily. Well, yeah, maybe they're just like faded variants of it. Right. Maybe now I should go towards like Florisax and do that quest, because I don't know if sending Tiolier early like will mess with that at all. Because I don't remember if we can continue to get the concoction or not, or if it becomes like a non-consumable item. So maybe somebody in chat will say something, but no big deal if not. Hey Camellia, welcome on into the stream. Did anyone else think the Altered Drake set has Smith script on its shoulder? I didn't pick up the Drake set, otherwise I'd look at it. So I cannot comment on that, unfortunately. Counting Sheep asks, is more Kindred of Rot or like Millicent? So he's more like Millicent. Some people think he looks like a Kindred of Rot because of like a weird Twitter picture, which is like a misrepresentation. I actually talked about this in one of the streams this week. Was it yesterday or the day before? I think it might have been at the very beginning of yesterday's stream. I went back and visited more by the church over here. So once you tell him to stay sad forever, he will cuddle up against the Kindred of Rot, which you may have given the Warming Stone, and will die. And because he cuddles up against that Kindred of Rot over here, somebody took a picture of that and misrepresented Moore's corpse as being like the Kindred's, which is not the case. I could show that off now as well. Where are we at? Why am I blind? Okay, this makes sense to me now. For some reason, I thought the Mirth Ruins was like to the northeast of this, but it's really just... this is just west of that. That explains why I got so confused traversing this area. This is a minor nitpick, but it is kind of annoying having to manually ride a torrent from there all the way to the church. So I'm really surprised that there's no side of grace by this church or by the Mesmer Soldier encampment or even by Ralva, the bear. Alright, so Moore should be over here. So it's a little bit dark, but we should be able to show this off a little bit better. Yeah, so that's Moore with his verdigris armor, and he's like right on top of the Kindred of Rot, which makes it kind of look like the Kindred of Rot could be bursting out of his armor, but that's not the case. Because this is the one that we rescued earlier. And Moore killed it. He's a bastard, man. And you guys wanted me to save Moore? Nah, he can stay sad. Counting Sheep says, these streams start at 3 a.m. for you, so you miss most of them. Oh, part of the reason why I'm saying like is on yesterday's stream is because all of these streams are archived on the live section of my channel. And of course, you might not have time to like go back and watch that. I totally understand. But if you're ever curious about a specific thing, you can visit them that way. And you could also watch these at like double speed if you're trying to economize your time a bit better. I did save it and now it's dead. Yep. Do I know anything about Japan's thoughts about the DLC and the lore? No, I actually don't even really know much about the West's thoughts other than like what I've shared and like what people have shared in my Discord. Oh, and like a couple of the comments on my channel, obviously. Moore killed it? I mean, I'm just saying that if you tell Moore to, you know, keep his chin up, this little Kindred of Rot doesn't curl up and die on its own. Just saying. So maybe more sadness is infectious. I don't know what else to say about that. So we did Tyler. How do we get to Jagged Peak? Oh, yeah, the suppression pillar. Yeah, Egon. Looks like delicious fried shrimp. Okay. Moore might have told it to be sad forever too. Maybe. Everybody's favorite.
Pain. The exquisite pain.
Whoops.
Pain. The exquisite pain.
So he takes a long time to kill you, obviously. Do I have a seppuku weapon to help speed him along? I could get hit by a blorbo. So I'm just doing this to show something off to most people which are probably going to miss. Did a lot of damage. That did not do a lot of damage. Now the trick is to do this but not die. Whew. This is really close. So yeah, Egon can use Grail's Roar right there, which is kind of interesting. Alright, just to show you guys something, you know, uncommon. I might need to use a Celestial Dew for pissing him off, but that'll be fine. Yep, okay. Chill out, bro. Eleanor's Pull Blade, nice choice. I have tried to see if you're like, oh, if I move my cursor over here, does this correspond to the real place? No, no, it doesn't really matter. No, that's inhibition. Okay. Calix was asking what happens if you tell Moore to move on. Does the prawn die? No, the prawn does stay alive. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the prawn stays alive after you give him the warming stone. Because you reload the area and then it gives you the item. That pain scream is brutal. You think Bale bit his stuff off? That explained the grudge? It would. Hey, Meow Laser, how's it going?
You're tarnished.
I haven't even talked to Muriel. Use Celestial Dew to receive absolution. My sins are absolved. So, talking about absolving sins, all of this stuff about burning the Erdtree and whatnot has made me wonder again about Radagon having the Celestial Dew baptism, because if it's just Radagon that got the baptism, then perhaps his sins were washed away, but not America's. And that might tie into some of Ymir's dialogue about America and her sins, and like the horn scent, talking about the strumpet and her sins. So the moral of the story is, if you're going to burn down a tree, bathe yourself in some Celestial Dew afterward. He should run into my sword. This is unfair. He's cheating. Yes, and even though the Gravebird did get me, I'm still gonna dunk on how they're still pretty easy to kill in general. Dragon Man. He's taking a bite out of crime. Oh man, so that's what it's like to be able to damage him and to not get died in 2 hits? Can't believe the DLC made the raw prawns cute. Just gotta, oh wow, just gotta make them little guys. It's always the trick. Yeah, go figure. The DLC made the rot prawns cute, and then they made the jar barons vile and disgusting. It's kind of really funny when you think about it that way. Alright, so before visiting Florisax, we're gonna go to the suppression pillar. This is too low. We need to go back up. Oh, Torrent was already weak. Alright, I'm just gonna go back, level up, and then go to the suppression pillar. The crusade hadn't happened when Radagon was cleansed. Oh, but I'm not trying to say like Radagon cleansed himself of the crusade, but I wonder if he was cleansed of the sins of the Erdtree, whereas Mariko is not. So I think that the Erdtree was burned before the crusade happened, is what I'm trying to imply with that. And this stuff here kind of reminded me of the... whatever these are called in Lane-Del, where you can find like the Lane-Del soldiers on by the place where you meet Corin. Like the Altus Highway Junction. Yeah, like the one like stone thing like right over here. But they're different. You finally got the bracelets. Del Gravebird. So some of these Gravebirds can also have the Ghost Flame attacks because they're breathing Ghost Flame. Oh Lord, I should have been sprinting. There we go. Night Scout thinks the absolution of the Celestial Dew is kind of limited, since it says you have no sins if you murder someone. It seems more like it just brainwashes people to not be mad at you. Same thing, right? Mostly doing that to heal Torrent. So they get for holding it too early. Sweet. Sometimes I forget that you like refill flasks killing enemies in the open world. It's quite nice. I think that's one of the better additions that they made to the game, especially for like open world and wanting to facilitate travel and whatnot. That symbol, that does appear on the Ancient Dynasty steles, doesn't it? Is this the same image? I'm gonna go to Shifra in a minute to double check that. I wish I had the free cam to show that stuff off. So we get the suppressing pillar. So, the suppressing pillar's name, I kind of get what they're going for. I'm trying to think of a better localization for it. Resting pillar? Quieting pillar? So we get the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone, and one of the more important, like, lore environmental details in the game. A tombstone which reads, "The very center of the lands between. All manners of death wash up here, only to be suppressed." So I really don't like that they went with suppressed with this, because it sounds like death isn't getting to do its thing, because it's being held back, like it's being pushed down almost. Whereas the Japanese, if I remember correctly, it uses like shizumeru, which means to not rest, but like quiet it. So like shizuka means to quiet something, and shizumeru means to quiet something, but in a different kind of context. Hold on, let me like look it up, because I'm struggling to think of how to articulate this. So this is like one of the worst parts of like knowing two different languages. It's knowing what a word is, but not knowing how to translate it sometimes. So okay, we could do this in chat. Shizumeru. So to quiet a child, to make quiet, to calm. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. To calm something. The calming pillar? Did I say calming earlier? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Suppress, relieve, to appease. Appeasing, that would be pacify, yeah. The appeasing pillar. I feel like calming pillar would probably be better. So let me... The very center of the lands between all manners of death wash up here, only to be calmed. Yeah, I think that would be probably good. But of course, like that's part of the issue of like translation and localization. It's trying to like find the best choice, and that is just kind of up to like literal interpretation. Well, figurative interpretation, maybe not literal. Well, like both, unironically. So, anyway, I'm probably going to do a short on this topic at some point in the near-ish future, just because I feel like only hearing suppressing, that probably isn't going to make people think of it quite in this way, which isn't to say that saying it's like the suppressing pillar is wrong. It just could be a little bit misleading, perhaps. Soothing, yeah, that'd be a good one. Yeah, that's perfect, Calyx. That was the word that I was struggling to come up with it in English. It's like the tip of the tongue sensation, where it's like you know what it is, but you're just not connecting the neurons there properly. The circle's encircled with basically infinity symbols. There's a celestial dew in the Erdtree sanctuary as well, which gives Night Scout the impression that Marika planned to use it for quite a while to force Liurnia to accept Radagon. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. So even if she like killed everybody, she could just pop it herself, and then they'd all be honky-dory. Night Scout says, you think it says suppressed because the things around the suppressing pillar aren't exactly at ease, to say the least. Well, that would kind of overwrite a lot of the lore, though, because if things aren't actually being calmed and soothed into a state of rest, that kind of shows something fundamentally wrong with the Shadowlands, perhaps? Or at the very least, something wrong with this pillar. Because it's not functioning properly. Operator asks, any thoughts for how these lands interact with the sealing of the Rune of Death? So, I don't know how clean this works, but with Destined Death being called the Forbidden Shadow, I kind of wonder if the Shadowlands were separated from the lands between in conjunction with the sealing of, well, technically the removal of the Rune of Destined Death from the Elden Ring. But that also brings up its own timeline issues that are up to the individual as to whether or not they believe that happened at the start of Marika's reign or later on in the timeline. I am of the opinion, even still now, that I think Destined Death may have been removed upon Radagon's ascension to Elden Lord. Because I haven't seen enough evidence for me to fully buy into the other idea that it'd be like when Marika began her reign. So, still on the fence on that. Alright, thank you, Enchoi. Understandable. Becalming Pillar doesn't have the same ring to it. No, I think Soothing Pillar would probably be good. Seems like the dead have to be kind of forced into stasis or lull rather than at ease, like their natural state is violent. Well, the dead do need guidance, as they say. So, I don't remember if there were any significant items over here. I know there's like a campsite on the other side of the hill before like leaving this spot entirely. I just don't want to piss off so many grave birds and have to fight them for no reason. Maybe if I come here at night, we'd get like a larval tier. I could see that working. Alright, I'm about to go back the other way and then toward Dragon Town. The ancient dragon smithing stone up there might imply this pillar has a faint tie to Farum Azula too? Maybe. Damn it. I turned too hard. Do I have it on? No. Just wondering if I accidentally took fall damage. Oh. Alright guys, we did it. We got the smithing stone tier 2. The thing that I remembered that was at the campsite. Definitely worth the detour. When you think about it too hard, you forget what you know. I always feel like I have a little bit of difficulty articulating my thoughts. I think I mentioned this maybe once on stream, but I feel like I'm way worse at articulating my thoughts on stream. And then I kind of figured it out one day as I was talking to like other people. Like I had just had like a light bulb moment that, like my everyday speech when I'm talking to people in real life, I have the opportunity to like formulate my thoughts more while they're speaking because I can connect the dots of what they're saying and kind of figure out like how I want to reply to it. Whereas when you're streaming on your own, it's just pretty much you're constantly firing off. So you don't have a lot of those moments to kind of like pause through and like think through your thoughts and present them well, I guess. Anyway, me struggling to think of how to articulate that right now might be an example of this. Jack's interested if Godwin wanted to die, because we're told constantly just how powerful he was. If he was too convenient that he would just lie down and die, you wonder if he wanted to. Well, I feel like having one's spirit get obliterated seems pretty bad, and to say that he was assassinated implies that he wasn't exactly willing to do it. I know we have the little wet nurse Grandam, damn it, the wet nurse finger reader crone saying that he was supposed to be a martyr to destined death, but I believe she means that if somebody is supposed to die, they should die to destined death fully and not end up in this half-dead state where Godwin's body is living on and his soul is gone, and so he's still technically alive, but like nobody's home. So he's like an affront to life and death, both. You suppose if you're a warlord, you want things to actually die in order to conquer them? Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, I did find it interesting that the Erdtree seemingly feeds off of death and everything about destined death in relation to that, and or when it would have been removed from the timeline, which is partially why I do think it ended up happening later on as well. But I don't really like, that's kind of like secondary stuff for me, as much as it is just like not having a lot of textual evidence of the Golden Order pre-existing Radagon, with the exception of the telescope description, which could be metaphorical, and it still leaves open a lot of questions as to like whether or not Karian astrology was affected with Radon and whatnot. So that's kind of like the biggest hurdle to overcome in the Golden Order later timeline theory of events there. You wish there's an item on top of the tower that was a bit more telling. It looks so important, but there's nothing at all important in it. Yep, that's the DLC for you. Jack was saying you wonder if Ranni knew that he wanted to die and took advantage of it, tricking him into believing she had a way for him to die a true death. Maybe, but I mean, this just ties into like my biggest gripe with like the base game, that we never really know the motivations for the character's actions. And then Night Scout doesn't think Godwin would have wanted to die. Ranni and the assassin seem to be conducting outright killings, expecting to be prepared for a fight as possible. True story, especially with the blasphemous claw given to Rykard to prevent Malekith from rampaging against them as well. So, alright everybody, I was going to go through this cave, but then I kind of figured if we're going to be doing a bunch of dragon stuff tomorrow, it may be a bit better to just start with this tomorrow, because then we get to do like all the Jagged Peak stuff mostly together. So that's where we'll continue on the next stream at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully we'll see you there on the next one. So until then, take care, stay safe. Last Protagonist out.